Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Monique Miles, and I'm a vice president at the Aspen Institute, and I'm also the director of the Opportunity Forum and Fund, which is a funders collaborative that supports 40 rural, urban, and indigenous communities across the United States to bring cross-system and cross-sector partners together to improve education and career outcomes for youth and young adults of color. At the core of our work, what we are really investing in are a set of interventions designed around belonging, meaning-making, well-being, and purpose that not only promote better health outcomes for youth and young adults of color, but also lead to better civic engagement, civic participation. And I'm honored to be here today with this panel of exceptional leaders in healthcare to have a conversation about supporting students to meaningfully explore futures in healthcare. And it is critical to name why this conversation is both timely and important. This is an important conversation because this plenary and the overall convening is about making the invisible visible. For youth and young adults of color who are dreaming about the future and wondering where and how they will fit into a broader ecosystem of work and civic life, particularly if you are a first-time college student or graduate student, it can be difficult to imagine what's possible or even understand what your options are in a meaningful way, because it is difficult to be what you cannot see. Or as the young adults I work with at Aspen say, we can't be what we can't see. And this gap in our ability to dream, when we don't see people who look like us in our future visioning and in our freedom dreaming, requires us to fill the gap, to make the invisible visible, to create spaces that help young students of color dream and also act. Because the power of transforming our future is really our ability to both dream and to act, to bring those dreams to fruition. And so that is really the conversation that we've come here together to have today. We are going to have a conversation about making career pathways in healthcare visible. And now that I've named the goals of this session, I want to walk you through the flow of our time together. I am going to turn this over to our panelists. Each of them are going to introduce themselves, and we're going to dive into a conversation. And please hear me when I say we want to be in dialogue with all of you. If you have questions, we'll certainly save some time at the end. But even as they're coming up, whatever's emerging, please raise your hand. We want to be in dialogue with all of you. And now, with that blueprint in mind, I'm excited to turn to the panelists. And I want to ask each of them to introduce themselves. And our opening question is not just introduce yourself and to share your work, bring your work into this room, but please help our audience to understand your why. Why is it that you do the work that you do? And I'm very excited to turn it over to you first.
Thank you so much. Sounds like it's working. Hello, I am Dr. Renee Crichlow. I use she, her pronouns. I am a mother. I am a family physician. I've taught in academic medicine for the last 25 years. I'm chief medical officer at Cotton Square Community Health Center in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm a total badass, and I do not aspire to be humble. I'm involved in this because I believe that things don't get better unless good people participate. And I am one of those Gen Xers who came up and was the only person in the room all the time, and I'm not ever going to let that happen to you. So why am I here? It's because it's healthcare. Healthcare is broken. It is lead, follow, or get out of the way, and I'm here to help you learn to lead.
Oh, well, all right. So I'm Dr. Sheldon Fields. In my day job, I'm the Associate Dean for Equity and Inclusion in the Ross and Carol Neese College of Nursing at Penn State University. I also have the very high honor of being the 14th president of the National Black Nurses Association. So that's my volunteer job. And I have been a nurse for 33 years. I've been a nurse practitioner for family nurse practitioner for 29 years. Also a Gen Xer. I need to get that in. I was a first generation college student, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, born to an African American mother, a Puerto Rican father, grew up on welfare, but I had an aunt But when you looked around in your family and you realized, well, who was being progressive? Who was doing what? It was my mother's sister. You know, we went to her house for every holiday. She had a car. She was like, well, wait a minute, what do you do? She was a nurse. So she was my inspiration. My why, you know, when I looked around and I realized that there was a calling on my life, because nursing requires a calling. I quickly realized it wasn't medical school because I hated biology, but it's just being honest. But I did take it, I did pass it. But I grew up being raised by my grandmother, who suffered from the ills of diabetes. I watched her go blind. I watched it take her life. And my aunt, remember that nurse, she taught me how to take care of my grandmother. My grandmother was my first patient. I was doing insulin shots at 10. I couldn't have been nothing else but a nurse. And I've only ever wanted to be a nurse. So the why is easy. I needed to help take care of my family in the communities in which I live, work, learn, die, and play. And there's just simply not enough people out there that looks like me. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means for you all as well. So nice to be here. Thank you.
Wow. My name is Dr. Eric Griggs. My title, I'm the Vice Chairman of the 100 Black Men Health and Global Health and Wellness Committee. My day job, I am the Assistant Vice President of Community Health Affairs for Access Health Louisiana, which is the largest federally qualified health center in Louisiana. I am for the last 11 years, I've been the health educator for the regional Fox 8 network. We're a bunch of titles. I'm the State Health and Wellness Ambassador, the City's Health and Wellness Ambassador, Adjunct Assistant Professor at LSU School of Medicine, Xavier College of Pharmacy. But the biggest title, the one I'm most proud of, is I'm Papa Doc. My daughter just had twins on October 9th. And the reason that I'm here is because I needed to find a me somewhere. Again, in the last panel, I'd given a little bit about my history. I grew up in a non-traditional, loving, supportive, amazing, rich family of love and support without a traditional biological father, but that niche was filled by various mentors. My grandfather was my dad. My uncle and any other male in the neighborhood, when I got in trouble, would take the liberties of correcting me, so I understood. But I had mentors along the way. Wanting to go into healthcare was something that was internal, that I couldn't fight. A lot of people didn't understand who or why I wanted to do so, but I just did. Ultimately, it ended up being girls when I was in high school, because the medical explorers on this side, legal explorers on this side, and I was only 5'2", and my voice hadn't changed, so I figured I had a better shot on this side. I met a Dr. Velma Watts in high school who identified me as a gifted student, and you're talking about being Gen X, being the only and only. I was wrong. I didn't fit at school. I didn't fit at home, and I tried to do everything but be gifted. I tried to dim my light. I tried to stomp it out, getting in the various mischief that you could get into with the fellas. But she wouldn't. She was relentless. So she mentored and ended up going to the University of Notre Dame. She handed me off to Dr. Anna Epps, that took the baton and sometimes threatened me with it to get me through med school at Tulane, and ended up graduating from med school. When I tried to leave the profession because it had changed around me, I met Dr. Mark Alexander, who kept me in the lines again, falling into public health. I fell into being a radio host 15 years ago, TV host. It's turned into me speaking every day to millions of people across the country, thousands every week on the radio, traveling to multiple countries. I currently work with a group called STEMNOLA. STEMNOLA started 10 years ago. We've engaged 200,000 kids in the last 10 years in 5 different continents. All that to say, this whole time, I had an inkling in my voice, in my mind, to keep pursuing medicine. Fast forward to October 2021, I decided to look for my biological father to fill that gap, that itch, that ache in my DNA. Upon looking for him on Ancestry, I found out that he had passed away. So I felt like I was never good enough to be anyone's son. Everybody else had somebody named after them, and I wasn't good enough. I was just Eric. Fast forward again to July of the same year, around Essence Festival time. My best friend comes down, saw the boxes of the genetic testing thrown in the corner. In an alcohol-induced state that I'm still mad at for because I had a headache the next day. He had said, let's see if you have an inclination to alcohol in your family. Took me down to the main post office and mailed it off. 3 weeks later, I'm in Washington, D.C. at a speaking engagement. I get a notification from 23andMe saying I have a new first cousin, and I came from a small family. I thought I knew all my cousins. And her name is Erica Marshall, and she's a physician assistant. So I'm like, wow, Erica, we're first cousins, but the math ain't adding up. It's like the math, what they say, math ain't mathing. And we start talking. Come to find out, Erica thought I was from New Orleans. I'm originally from Winston-Salem. She said, Erica, I figured it out. I know how we're related. I know who your dad is. I'm like, yeah, it was this guy. He died. And she said, no, I talked to your dad this morning. I almost passed out in the Dallas airport, of course. She goes, you really don't really understand or know. You're a third-generation doctor. Your father and grandfather worked together for 25 years. For a brief time, I was a walk-on at Notre Dame as a receiver. She said your dad played receiver at Wake Forest. He's got crooked feet, bow legs, wears a size 12, 13 shoe. He's allergic to seafood, and his first name is, Eric. Not only that, we come from a lineage of doctors. There are 36 doctors in my family, going back to the emancipation of the slaves. The last slave owner in our family was Dr. James Howlett. Additionally, and most ironically, Papa, my grandfather, was the first black eye doctor in the city of Richmond, second in the state of Virginia, and he was first inductee into the Optometry Hall of Fame for his work in the community. So I'm here to tell you to listen to that little voice or that little tickle that just won't go away. They're going to make fun of you. But if you stick with it, you will be surprised because your tribe will come to you and follow any mentorship that can help lead you along the way.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Jordyn Norde. I'm a pharmacist by trade, and in my day job, I am the pharmacist-in-charge at RxO Community Pharmacy. So if you've heard of Express Scripts before, my company is called RxOutreach. They branched off, formed a nonprofit mail order pharmacy, and they've recently started their own brick and mortar and hired me to run that. So that is what I do every day. I am also the founder and president of St. Louis Black Pharmacists Association, where we gather on a mission to provide scholarships for pharmacy students, as well as get the black pharmacists in the area together around community, because there are more of us out there than you think, and sometimes without that visual, as you said, if you can't be what you can't see, and so being able to come together, promote that for the students and the pharmacy space, but also younger students is our mission. And my why is, I say all the time that I am where I am today because of God and black women. So it is my mission to be a black woman that champions other black women and people in general, and just promote that, health and wellness is important, and it can look like whatever we want it to look like. And there are a lot of there's space that we need to take up in that same space, and so really just wanting to spread that message, and I'll talk a little more about that.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Edgar Rios, Dr. Edgar Rios. I'm a pharmacist by training as well, and I am also a Gen Xer, so kind of what I am. I'm a pharmacist, and I worked in the hospital setting for 20 years. About 2 years ago, I made a transition into the pharmaceutical industry. So now I work for Pfizer. I'm on their vaccine field medical team. And in my role, I engage with healthcare providers and other external stakeholders to inform them and educate them on safe and effective use of vaccines to help promote vaccination efforts and public health. Why I got into healthcare? I am one out of 4 children, the first generation born here in the United States. My parents immigrated from Mexico, And as the first generation to go to school here in the States, we were the first ones to learn English as small children. And so as a child, I always ended up getting dragged along with my parents and my grandparents to their medical appointments. My paternal grandmother had cancer when I was a young child, and so I always got dragged along to her appointments and had to be a translator for them with their healthcare providers. And so I think that stuck with me as a child, and kind of drove my mission of why I wanted to get into healthcare. I wanted to be there to help people like my grandparents and my parents who didn't have someone there who spoke their language, and that's why I'm here. So.
You can see we have put together, Pfizer has put together an esteemed panel, and there's something I want to name. This intergenerational dialogue is very intentional. What we don't have many opportunities to do is to sit intergenerationally. And the reason why it's so important is because we today are drinking from the wells that our ancestors built. And so hearing these panelists tell stories of the role of intuition, the role of purpose and destiny, the relationship between dreaming and action, I just want to say how important it is, because you all represent what the next generation will point to as they begin to dream about what's possible. So really excited to dig into this intergenerational conversation here today. And with that, the next question is, I want to invite whoever wants to kick us off to talk a little bit about opportunities for healthcare workers across the spectrum, the entire spectrum of the healthcare field, to impact specifically patient health outcomes and health equity. What can that look like?
I'll jump in. So the largest segment of the healthcare workforce are nurses. And I say that because, you know, a lot of times you look at the healthcare system and it's hierarchical, and it looks like it's doctors and everybody else is beneath. And that's just simply not the case. Healthcare works as a team. Nobody does anything in healthcare by themselves. And you can get the really a wrong impression by looking at any of the medical shows and all that other stuff. I mean, I look at them and I criticize them, like, yeah, that's not how that works. But nursing also has a moral and ethical obligation to prepare a future workforce that looks like what society actually is. And at 80% white and 87% female, nursing is neither gender nor racial ethnically diverse. And nursing has done a horrible job of assuring that people have access to our profession. And to me, it makes no sense. So one of the things that I do, and I will do until the day they won't let me do it anymore, is I do everything that I can, even at Penn State, to make sure that there are pathways for brown and black students, single parents, and men to enter the nursing profession. And I stand in that gap. You know, and the thing that we do, even with the National Black Nursing Association, we are 113 chapters in 34 states. We are everywhere that we can possibly be at this point. Just opened up a chapter in Iowa. But, so we're trying to make sure that people do see us and see us as that way, because the research is there. Someone mentioned it earlier. You get better healthcare outcomes if you have allegiances with healthcare providers. It's race, it's ethnicity, it's age, it's gender, it's religion, it's all those things. But if you have some commonalities, and from a cultural perspective, you know, because things are just, that don't have to be said, you know, and certain things are just done. Like I can walk, at my age, I can walk into my black doctor and they know that I needed to have a colonoscopy, I needed to check my PSA because, you know, prostate cancer is high in black men. I don't know if another provider would have done that. So it's just so vitally important that we get you all into these pipelines, because, you know, the road to any of the health professions can be very long. And nursing school is incredibly challenging. We can talk about the specifics of that later, but I'll stop there and give my colleagues an opportunity.
So does anybody remember, this is a little small word, It's an improper word to say in public. It starts with a C, ends with a D, has a V in the middle, there's an O on one side, and there's an I on another that put everybody on punishment, called COVID. We weren't seen. What happens is once we get into the pipeline, and we need to do more, we need to start earlier on getting kids interested in being in healthcare, but we weren't seen. I've been in television and radio for 15 years, and I was one of the faces of COVID. And part of my new job that I did not realize was part of healthcare was I worked 7 days a week, 18 hours a day for 4 years, speaking and trying to educate the general public about COVID. What happens is we fall into the pipeline being the best and brightest, and we learn jargon. We can talk about CPAP. We can talk about PICC lines. We can talk about SCM, sternocleidomastoids. We can talk about COVID. We can talk about RNA replication. And everyone does this like they do at the doctor. Oh, what are they saying? I have no idea what he's talking about. We have to be seen. Once you cross the threshold of entering and getting a degree and being a doctor, being a nurse, being a pharmacist, it doesn't change who you are at your essence. Everyone's watching, and someone younger than you is watching you. And no matter how much you don't know, the little bit that you do know, it's our obligation to step outside of the hospital, step outside of the clinic, step outside of our neighborhood, but mostly step outside of our head, because you're really not that important. Nothing shows it like a pandemic. Nothing shows it like a hurricane. I got a riddle for the audience. What do you call a doctor with no patients after a hurricane? Anyway, we'll take it from the audience. What do you call him? Or her? Somebody broke without need a job. It's your humanity. We have to remember our humanity. So my appeal and my plea, not only to you as you embark on this journey, you're here in this room. Go back and tell someone younger than you, little brother, little cousin, little neighborhood, friend at church, hey, guess what I did this week? I went to this, and what did you do? They're fascinated. You are their hero without even realizing it. And for my colleagues, we have to step outside of our bounds. Most TV stations don't have a designated health expert. And if you don't think about the dollars, you'll call and, hey, I saw y'all talking about RSV, respiratory syncytial virus. Do y'all know what that is for real? Can I just come on and talk candidly? You're the expert because you're able to understand at whatever level it is that you comprehend is gold to the regular community. So my appeal is, after you leave here, go back and talk about it, give it to someone younger, and then stay there. With the 100 Black Men, our platform is what they see is what they'll be. And if you just go to work and go home, they never see you.
I'm going to piggyback on that real quick. I'm sorry, Jordyn. You'd like to go ahead?
Well, I'll just jump in briefly. He mentioned the word jargon, and that's something that in the medical field you'll hear all the time, this medical jargon and all these big words. And one of the things that he also touched on is being your true authentic self in that space. You can be a clinician and still be yourself. And we talked about this earlier. What is professionalism, right? One of the things that I've learned in my clinical practice, I used to operate as a clinical pharmacist as well, is that you're able to connect so much deeper when you're simply being yourself. Your patient isn't connecting to the big terminology that you learned in school. They're connecting to your superpower of being able to be you, break it down to them, and then simply say, hey, this is what all of that actually means. And if you can make them laugh and engage them even better, that's 10 times more effective than just listing off some numbers on a chart. That's 10 times more effective than just trying to show off how smart you are. But when you're able to show, again, that humanity, that's what really takes you and your clinical practice to the next level. That's what makes you sought after.
So I'm piggybacking on that. So connecting those two, the biggest thing is this, is us being in the room as Black and brown folks changes that room. That room is, I've never been in a room that doesn't have a Black person in it, because I'm in it. And you have to understand, in healthcare, that is powerful. COVID, the people that noticed that Black patients weren't getting their pulse ox read appropriately were respiratory therapists who were, wait for it, Black and brown. And those are the decision points for deciding who was going to go on a ventilator, who was going to get particular medications. The fact is, when we're not in the room does not pay attention to us. And healthcare is straight up broken. Every one of you know people that have chronic illnesses, and black and brown people, we're living shorter, sicker lives than anybody else. And it's because we're not a part of the decision making and any of the policies about where we live, work, learn, and play. And we're not in the rooms when the decisions are made around healthcare. Every single person up here has 7 or 8 different titles. We don't need those. We need you to take some of these fucking titles. Take some titles. I moved from Minneapolis to Boston. When I moved from Minneapolis to Boston, 4 black people replaced me. You know where those 4 people came from? They came from a program that we started 12 years ago, and it's called The Ladder. And when they were medical students, they would come to The Ladder and they would mentor younger kids. And those kids, mentoring those younger kids, said, hey, maybe I want to be a faculty member. So 4 of them, this is probably why I'm on my second marriage. Because when I left there, my ex-wife said, see, it took 4 people to replace you. And I said, it took 1 to replace you. So anyway, I didn't say that out loud, did I? Yeah, I did. Yeah, but that's where we are. We, Gen X, black and brown, we have 17 jobs. We just want to give you 1. And that 1 job is going to be amazing. Every single one of us, there's no door that you can't get through right now because we're on the other side now. We will get you through that door. You have to show up and want to get through that door. And there's so many different jobs in healthcare. And right now, the old system that used to fill them is not filling them. So guess what? They notice us now. Yeah, but guess what? Those jobs will buy you a house. Those jobs will buy you a car. Those jobs will allow you to buy your mom a house and a car once certain people get elected. But anyway, we'll stay away from that. But the fact is this, we have a lot of places that are ready for you to be. You have to be your authentic self. You don't be what they tell you you need to be. Those days are over. Gen X, we did that. We showed up, we looked pretty, we pressed our hair when they said press your hair, all this stuff. Now, look at me, you think I would have gotten this job 20 years ago? I do not think so. We've set, the bars are gone. Walk through the door, it's yours to take, but you have to believe that you can do it. We'll support you, we'll back you up, but you got to be there.
Can I before that?
You might be what I was about to do. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that before the pig gets tired, I want to piggyback real quick. The only appeal I have, and this is working with the younger generation, is please be more aggressive. When our mentors would open the doors for us, we had to chase them. We had to prove that we were deserving of their time from these 20 jobs that they had. You're not bothering us. You're showing commitment. And it's not a slight. If we can't make an appointment, it's not personal. It's just that we have to keep our job so we can open the door. But be more aggressive and proactive about persistently. The mentee I have is a 4th-year med student now. When I tell you she bugged me to death, to the point that I'm like, okay, just come on, let's get this going. And now she's a 4th-year med student. So be more aggressive about it. We will support your assertiveness.
Edgar, did you want to get into this? Did you want to add anything? Okay.
I just want to say something really quick, brief story. So I mentioned our nonprofit. We have scholarships that we give away. And pharmacy is heavily female dominated, unfortunately, and we're trying to get more males. And I've had some opportunity to get some males a part of our organization, but they won't apply for scholarships. So I asked one of them, I said, why didn't you apply? He said, well, the letter of recommendation. I said, well, what was the problem? And he said, well, I reached out to my advisor or one of his professors earlier that year to get a letter of recommendation, and he didn't want to bug her anymore. And I said, that's precisely why you're there. So essentially what they're saying, don't ever, and I mean ever, feel like you're bothering anybody. If you are in school, if you're paying tuition, if you are working, if you're whatever you're doing, the people that are above you or around you, utilize them, lean on them, get what you need out of that institution. They're going to get what they need out of you. So you better make sure you do your part to get what you need. Don't ever let a scholarship go by because, oh, I didn't want to bug someone to write me a letter of recommendation. You can write the letter yourself and get them to sign it.
There you go.
Ding, 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 ding.
Here's a major tip. You write that letter yourself, and you send it to them and go, I took the opportunity to give you a draft. Please adopt it or edit it.
And that's therapeutic, like Doc here said, and I am awesome. It affirms you don't have to worry about imposter syndrome. How do you know you're awesome? I just wrote my letter of recommendation. I was talking about me. I said so.
Because I said so.
You know, I was thinking, you may have heard this before, the only thing that beats a failure is a try. And the other way to say that is you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You may as well shoot your shot, right? And then the other thing that I'm thinking about as we have this conversation is also that we talk about a lot in my work at Aspen is particularly for young people of color, when you come into your consciousness, no matter what, like your identity, the consciousness of your identity, and most importantly, how institutions and systems, whatever value or lack of value they might place in your identity, so much of your own agency, self-determination, sitting within owning your power is, yes, tied to your own ability to decide that you are awesome and to also be in a network and a community of people who are nourishing you, who are pouring into you, who can give you that kind of advice around just go ahead and write the recommendation yourself. Here's how you move and pivot. Because what people are talking about here is depending on when you came into your career as a person of color, there were rules that were written and there were rules that were unwritten. Those rules are shifting and changing in ways that not only create greater access, they require you to show up as your most authentic self. So you don't have to go through the imposter syndrome. You don't have to repeat some of what may have held previous generations back. And that's the power of sitting in intergenerational dialogue. We get to learn new lessons. We get to practice different strategies. And every time you do, you open the door for more people who look like you to come through afterwards. All right. Moving on to the next question. So there's a lot of discussion around the social determinants of health, which, you know, mostly for the sake of this conversation, is just the idea that health is not only impacted, of course, by the, healthcare system, our bodies, et cetera, but also the things in our environment, like education, like housing, like economic opportunity, et cetera. So there's a lot of conversation about the social determinants of health. How can young professionals ensure that patient health remains a priority in their work within areas such as education, housing, and economic development programs? And I would love to actually start with Jordyn or Edgar, if that's okay.
Okay. I think when I read this question, the first thing that kind of popped into my mind was use social media, right? This is a tool that everybody has access to, whether or not they use it. Especially you're thinking about older generations who started to download Facebook and things of that nature. And it's exciting for me because when we're talking about access, everybody has a phone. And not everybody has a doctor's office down the street, right? So they may not be able to go and get proper medical care within their hometown, but maybe there is a healthcare influencer that's talking about the issues that really is important or impacting them. And so that's something that I would encourage you all as you go through your careers, as you go through your journey as a student, what lights you up? What makes you excited? What gets you going? And talk about it. Utilize your platform. Even if you're not a huge social media person, you can write on Threads or Twitter or something like X. I'm sorry, I'm acting old. X. And utilize those platforms to share the information that you're learning as a student. I think there's so many different ways, and now you've got AI and all of these different tools. Make sure that you don't waste the knowledge solely in your 9 to 5. Make sure that you're expanding that. And now that is not to say cross boundaries, because you need time for yourself. But when you have the opportunity, take that time to share information beyond just the scope of your work, but also to make sure that there is access there for the broader community and that you know that you've done your part to spread those messages that are important to you and the community abroad.
Kind of to add to that, I think one way to do that is to build that lens into your work, right? You have to look for those social determinants of health. From my experience working in the hospital system as a pharmacist, we would discharge patients home and give them a list of here's your medications, here's what you need, but did they have access to get those things? Were they able to get to a pharmacy and get the medications they need? Did they have insurance or a way to pay for those medications? So, building those kind of screening tools into your work, and then building referral networks in your community so that you know where to refer folks for resources when they don't have access to those. So I worked in a hospital where we saw a large percentage of indigent patients, and so we did a lot of that. Back then, we didn't call it social determinants of health. We just called it taking care of patients.
Oh, so I want to start, we started with jargon, right? The word jargon. Does everyone know what social determinants of health is? I didn't think so. So it's a jargon term that helps determine what's funded, because social determinant of health, as it breaks down over the years, is just your community. All of the studies have shown from a public health lens that our health is determined 20% by our genetics and 80% by the world we live in and how we interact with it. She just made me feel like I really don't have any hair because she brought up X. We don't necessarily think about the social media environment as part of our social determinants of health, our built environment. It's intentional. The environment you build around you, you can choose intentionally and sometimes, most of the time unintentionally to be a part of, can determine your health. You get that bad text from that wrong person that you forgot that you didn't block. It changes your whole day. Your cortisol goes up, blood pressure goes up. You might throw your phone in the river. I'm sorry. Did I get distracted? You might damage your goods, your property. But the point is, take those words. Don't be afraid to put your hand up and be like, I'm sorry, I don't understand what that means. I'm sorry, I don't understand what that means. Not only can that save your life, it can save the life of your loved one as you go to the doctor with it. I'm going to advocate for everyone that's in the pipeline of healthcare, go to the doctor with your relatives and ask the difficult questions. As they'll tell you, we can't leave a room until we answer the questions. And then what happens is, as I'm experiencing now with my grandson, you'll get the question, you'll get the side eye, oh, so you know a little bit about medicine, huh? I might know about that much. I've been a doctor for almost 30 years. I might know a little something. And they change the way that your loved one is treated. Your social determinants of health is the environment that you choose, you live in, and you can choose to determine how it interacts with you. Does that make sense? Now, what is social determinants of health again? Say, I need to hear from the audience. What is it? One word. Huh? Environment. There we go. All right.
So I need to say this because I'm a professor. I teach this stuff all the time. I'm also a health policy expert. I was a Robert Wood Johnson Health Policy Fellow during Obama's first term. I worked on the Affordable Care Act. So you can, and there's a chart, and you all can pull out your phones, and you can actually Google social determinants of health. There's a chart by Kaiser Family Foundation, and it's my favorite one. And you know why? Because they take the various categories of social determinants of health, whether it be food, the environment, socioeconomic status, and they put across it racism and discrimination. Because I know, after all my years of doing this work, that amongst the social determinants of health, there's an influence of institutional and structural racism and discrimination that impacts a lot of what it is that we do, the opportunities, how these opportunities are structured. And there's a very big difference, even in the same city where you live, just simply based on your zip code can determine, how long you live, even in the same city blocks away, So all of these things you have to keep in the back of your mind because, America would have you believe in the myth of meritocracy. What's the myth of meritocracy? Thank you. Work hard, get ahead. The only thing you need to do is pull yourself up by your bootstraps. The problem is it makes an assumption that everyone starts at the same level and it's a level playing field. That's not true. That's not true in any America I grew up in. And it's still not true. It's not true in this current presidential election. It's just not true. We don't choose to have 50 million jobs. We had no choice. And you heard ever from your elders, you got to be twice as good, get twice as far, and do twice as much? Absolutely, for half the credit. So there's some truth to that. But I also want you to hear one thing. Those social determinants, where you grew up or how you grew up, to a certain extent, might put some obstacles in your way, but don't let those obstacles be the only thing, because you can do what you need to do, but it may look a little different. And one of those things, and you brought it up, and you brought it up earlier, find some mentors. Find somebody who will believe in you and your dream. Because it was really hard to do something that you had not seen before. They laughed at me when I went to nursing school. Men aren't supposed to be nurses because, men aren't compassionate, caring, and empathetic. What you doing going to nursing school? And when I went to get a PhD in nursing, every single program I applied to, you know what they said to me? We've never had a black man in our program. I have a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, Ivy League school. And I was the first black man ever in that program, but I was determined not to be the last. And therein lies the difference. But when I met Dr. Randolph Rash, who was the first black man to ever get a PhD in nursing, I looked at him, it was nothing, I just cried. Because the man was my hero. When I found out, because they lie to you about what you think you can be. And, and again, social determinants of health. You didn't grow up in places and spaces where you saw things like that. But it cannot be your determining factor. So.
No, that's what he said. That was good. But I will definitely pick back on that. So here's the thing. Okay, one of the reasons I came here to Oklahoma City, I was born in Oklahoma City. I was born in Oklahoma City. I don't use years because they're not as cool as levels. I'm level 56. So I was born in Oklahoma City in a hospital that was desegregated the year before I was born. And why was I living in Oklahoma City? My dad was in college. He was doing his master's in petroleum engineering at University of Oklahoma, which is where? In Norman. Why weren't we living in Norman? Because black people didn't live in Norman yet. So when I think about the social determinants of health, my biggest one, when I look, if you want an easiest way to do social determinants of health, to big old fancy academics phrases, no. Social determinants of health, where you live, learn, work, and play, has the biggest influence on your health outcomes. Where you live, learn, work, and play. Your zip code has a bigger impact than your genetic code. That is just a fact. That is not something that has to be a fact. It is a chosen path that we have made in this country. The healthcare outcomes of the day are the result of choices that were made in policies 60, 70 years ago. It's all that outcome. So what's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. Next best time, today. We want to change the result of social determinants of health. You're the tree we're planting right now. And this is the thing. When I look at the biggest impact what I do as a physician, my biggest impact is, great. I take care of patients. I take care of communities, blah, blah. My biggest impact is a mentorship group that helps kids graduate from high school on time. You graduate from high school on time, that adds 10 years to your life. Find me one drug that does that. But I'll tell you where we run into the problem. Racism, as my favorite nurse points out. Fact is, as someone who graduated college and a black woman, I have a higher risk during my maternity than a white woman who's never graduated high school. I had a crash C-section, and when I say crash, it was crash. I was like, did you put that epidural in? Anyway, long story short, our education will not protect us from racism, but our education will help us bring racism to a halt because we will be a part of the systems that make the next policies. And it's lead, follower, get out of the way. You want better health? You get a part of the system, whatever it is, whether it's pharmacy, nursing, phlebotomy, whatever. You show up, you do your black job. you'll change the world.
Black jobs. So we do have a few more questions teed up, and we will need to wrap up soon. So I just wanted to do a quick call to the audience to see who has a burning question that you want to bring to our panelists. All right, thank you, thank you. You getting them? All
There you
right,
go.
Okay.
He's doing the leadership part. There you go.
Exactly. So does anyone have a question?
First one asks a question gets a letter of recommendation.
Well, good evening. My name is Daisha Isaac. I'm a senior biology major from Langston University. And my question is, when overcoming your barriers, how did you maintain your why? How did you focus on your why when you felt like you couldn't reach your why?
I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice. My brother was the athlete. I was not getting out the ghetto bouncing the basketball. That was not my life. He went to the court, I went to the library. I didn't have a choice. And I had a grandmother who was functionally illiterate. And I figured it out one day when we were reading the Bible. You know how, you just sort of read a verse, and I'm reading the verse, and she's reciting it from her memory, and I'm like, Mama, that's not what that's. I got it. She believed in me. Unconditional love. And I needed to do better. Because when I graduated from college, I graduated from my entire family. I walked out of that auditorium and I gave my degree to my grandmother. And it hung in her house until the day she died. To whom much is given, much is expected. I was the youngest in my family. But I had been given an opportunity to go to school. And I grew up with a great-grandmother and her sister who didn't have that opportunity. Kind of crazy when you think about the history of this country that made it illegal to teach black people how to read. Think about that. And now they don't even want to teach the accurate history of this country. Think about that. But how dare I not? So you had a bad day. Figure it out. Because going back was not an option.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot.
Hello? Okay, I echo the same sentiment. My parents came here, they immigrated from Mexico, they worked, and I saw how hard they worked, and everything that they had to do to get us ahead, and it just wasn't an option. You had to do it. You had to go to school, you had to graduate. I was the first one in my family to graduate, and same thing. When I graduated, my whole family was there, and it was an achievement for everybody. So, it's
I'm going to go with spite. They didn't think I could do it. I'm like, really? Underestimate me again. Let's see that happen. Because the thing is, there's a point, especially all these different pathways, they're challenging. You just got to, who woke me up at 4:30 in the morning to go do rounds? Me. But you know who I said thank you to? Everyone that came before me. I did. I'm like, I couldn't have done it without you, but I was the one that had to wake up, get out of bed, and go do the thing. And I did it because a lot of people said I couldn't. And then I did it because I wanted to. Because spite will only get you so far, which is pretty far if you work it right. But that last part, my leadership style is unconditional love. You hate people you've never met. I love everybody. And I want us to live in a better world. And I didn't see anyone trying to do it except for those of us who were just showing up. So I had to show up.
So if you want to take the island, burn the boats. Once you start a marathon, I run marathons and ultra marathons. Once you start the race, you can't go back to the beginning. Now, does that mean that you're going to get a cramp? Yes. Will you get a rock in your shoe? And what happens when you get the rock in your shoe, you leave it in your shoe because sometimes it's the motivation to keep going until you can sit down and get it out, and you can feel the relief and go even further than you can ever imagine. When you have bad days, when there are obstacles in your way, first thing you do is you look at yourself, like, this is okay, I got this, but then you go tell somebody. That's why you have mentors. Ooh, I'm gonna go tell. Wait till I'm gonna go get my mentor for you. Tell somebody. But again, when I applied to med school, when I would go to the interviews, well, Dr. Eric, what do you think you're gonna do if you don't get in? I'm like, I don't know what you mean. What do you mean? Well, what if you don't get in, do you have a backup plan? I'm like, I'm sorry, I applied to 10 schools. Am I in the right place? Y'all asked me to come here. I don't, why would I think about losing? If I'm going to be in the game, why would I think about not winning? If I lose, I'll lose that play, but I'm going to win. This is a marathon, and I'm going to get my ribbon. So if you want to take the island, burn the boats. And at the worst, go tell somebody. Go tell. We got you back.
And I will just echo, he said, how dare I not? And that is really probably the biggest thing that got me through school, because my grandmother and my mother and all of these people who came before me, even if they were awful, they had to get to a certain point to help me get to where I am today, right? So that's the first part. Second part, pray about it. You know, I think there is a new wave that I'm loving to see of God coming back into our lives in social media and just in presence in general. And I'm going to say that here because I feel like we've gotten very far away from that. And I think that it warrants being said. So pray about it and believe wholeheartedly in yourself that nobody is coming to save you. You have to do it. You are the only person that can get to that finish line. It doesn't matter how many mentors you seek out. It doesn't matter how many coaches you have. It doesn't matter how many friends or family members are cheering you on. You don't get there without that belief in yourself. And thank you, 1,000%. I don't know if I could do it without y'all some days. That is what helps remind you of your why. But at the end of the day, you got to have that grit. As I heard somebody say, you got to have that dog in you. You know what I mean? You got to go after it. Because nobody's coming to save you. And I think keeping that in the back of your mind, like, I'm going to make something of myself. I am going to be somebody. And I don't care what everybody else did. I don't care. My whole family is doing absolutely nothing, but I am going to do something.
Earlier, this came up in our panel. The only piece I would add to all of this beautiful wisdom is be so clear about your relationship to nourishment. How you were nourished, what nourishes you. And don't forget, nourishment comes in all kinds of forms. The music we listen to, the TV shows we watch, the company we keep, how we organize our days and our time. I will just say, always keep top of mind, but also top of heart, your relationship to nourishment on this journey. So do we have any more questions?
I see a question.
Come on, sister.
Hi, my name is Maria Brown. I'm also a senior biology major from Langston University. And my question is, what would be one or two skills you would advise a undergraduate that's just graduating to either learn or brush up on?
This one's quick. Meditation. Black and brown people don't meditate enough, and this world is trying to kill you all the time. What it's very helpful for is it allows you to take the pause, center yourself, and take that next step. There's a bunch of apps, fine, use the apps. There's a bunch of whatever online. If you bring meditation into your life, if I'd have done that 40 years before, I'd be 40 years happier. So no, but that's my big one, meditation.
I don't disagree about that with wellness, but I'm going to give you a real practical one. Look at me. Financial literacy. Financial literacy. Because it's not taught. We don't talk about it in Black and brown families a lot, and they are 10 steps ahead of us. But in America, it's easy to get rich if you know how. You know, I'm like Nina. I tell people all the time, I'm rich, bitch. and not just in financial wealth, although that too. But I figured some stuff out. And this is going to cost you something to go to school, but money should not be the obstacle for you to get your education. Not in any medical field. It should not be. Financial literacy.
The other thing that I would add is sleep. The recommendations that we've all told people is, you got 6 to 8, 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And just curious, how many people get 9 hours of sleep? 8. 7. 6. 5. I'm going to stop asking. Rest is the time for your body to heal. Fatigue makes cowards of us all. Imposter syndrome sneaks in. Confidence, the fact that I can write my own letter. I don't deserve to be here. I didn't graduate from the University of Pennsylvania. I'm not really a doctor. I'm not supposed to be here. Why? Because I'm tired. Sleep. And the basic of the most, and we've all been on the committees where we're selecting someone for something. Please, thank you, a smile, and eye contact.
I'd second all of those. Financial literacy, I think, is at the top. I didn't learn that until I was an adult. So I think, because you have to. Nobody's teaching it to you. You have to go out there, and when you're making your own money, you take care of your assets, right? But I think the other one is technology, because things are moving so fast with technology that if you don't keep up with it, you can get behind. And I think it's going to be crucial and necessary no matter what field of work you're in for the future. So
I would 100% second that. AI, if you have not even looked at ChatGPT, it's time. If you have not done any part of AI, it's time. That is going to be the future. If you are smart and want to have a job and be in demand, you're going to do something in technology, healthcare associated, healthcare or otherwise, you need to do something with technology. The other thing that I would say is a little more intangible, but be present and be a sponge. I think often our younger generations, we think we know everything, and there's so much to learn from people who have been there before, and that is a hill I will die on. I think that there is oftentimes, we don't listen. We do not listen, and there's so much to be learned if you simply take the time to listen. Be present in the presence of people who have things to offer you. You don't know everything. How could you? Why would you want to know everything? Because knowing there's no fun in that, right? Being to say, oh, I didn't know that. Wow, thank you, right? That's how you build relationships. You'll hear all day long, networking. How do you network? You start by having something to say for who you are yourself, and then presenting that to somebody that can champion you in the future, right? I think so often we want to be right. We want to know it all. We don't want to look dumb. How many things have we missed out on for fear of looking dumb? Who cares? They don't know either. And that's just a fact. So simply be present and be a sponge. Soak up every ounce of information that is around you about any topic, because you never know when you're going to need it, and you never know when it's going to benefit you, and you never know if that one small thing you learned about the green hose that's attached to your house could be the thing that he cares about the most in this whole wide world. And now that's your avenue to your mentor. It's so simple, but you have to be willing to learn, and you have to be an open-minded person in order to get the contacts that you need that is going to advance your career. That's why I said before, I am where I am today because of God and Black women, because I cared enough about who I was. I cared enough about who had something to say about where I was going, and I made an active effort to talk to them, to get to know them, to share my why to them. And I will say, last thing, it's so important that once you figure out what it is that you want to do or think you might want to do, say it to everybody nonstop. Like, nonstop, because that's what, say it, if I knew I wanted to be a pharmacist, well, I had an elevator pitch when I was in an internship. I'm going to be a pharmacist, and I want to be an expert in patient education, and da-da-da-da-da-da, and I talked to everybody, and that is how I found my mentor, who got me my first job, who ended up getting me to, I got awards and all these different things, so it all works together. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you. So, meditation, so that you can quiet your mind and your body and be present. Financial literacy, because yes, you are rich in many, many ways, and we're building intergenerational wealth all at the same time. Rest, because rest is resistance. Yeah, self-care is not indulgence, it's preservation. AI, because it is definitely a part of the future and we must all be prepared. I also heard a call for deep listening, because that is where not just meaningful learning happens, but maybe where transformation also happens. But most importantly, I want to invite you all to join me in thanking these panelists. What I wanted to frame at the top was, in connecting with them to plan for today, there was this value, this core belief around lifting as they climb. And I think you heard that, right? So the idea that they are building wells that they will not drink from, but you all get to drink from these wells, and now you get to go forward and build wells for future generations that will drink. That is the wisdom that was shared here today, and we're so excited and delighted for how all of you are going to carry this knowledge forward in the future. Join me in thanking these panelists, please.